pros and cons to the Baylor versus Albany football game. First off, I'm going to start with the cons, which there's not a ton of them. No 100-yard rushers in the game, which is a little surprising, though. They had every player that ran the ball during the game had 12 attempts or less, so I get that. But in the first half, they only had 45 rushing yards. So, I don't. It's based on the execution and bad looks from the defense, as in like 9 guys in the box or 8 guys in the box. But they took advantage in the passing game in the first half, though. They allowed 6 tackles for loss, which most of those were in the first half, as well as 2 sacks. But 2 sacks is actually not bad, given how many passing attempts, but still. The defense allowed 45 rushing yards to the starting quarterback during the game, and that was out of 87 rushing yards total. But they couldn't contain him. And they need to be a better job containing the quarterback on scrambling, because Jaron Hall, he could run too, I know, from BYU. Only like 3 tackles for loss and 2 sacks during the game. Not as good, but they didn't allow a ton of rushing yards, though. So, But some of that sack situation was they had pressure. It was just they couldn't get the quarterback down. At times, the pass defense allowed like a player or some plays, and it had a few guys wide open or not within 3 to 5 yards. Like, that's not good. Of course, Noah Rauschenberg, he was a backup punter during the game, and he was used to punt the ball. He had 1 punt for 14 yards. That was just shanked. 8 penalties for 75 yards. That has to be cleaned up. All of those are correctable. Like, delay a game on the defense. That's a bad penalty. Holding, blocking the back, personal foul. You know what I'm saying. They're all correctable. You barely lost time possession. 29 minutes, 32 seconds on offense for Baylor compared to Albany's 30 minutes, 32 seconds. Now, the pros, there's a bunch of them. First of all, it was night and day in the passing game. 22 completions out of 27 for 314 yards with 2 touchdowns overall, which Blake Shapen had 17 completions out of 20 for 214 yards with 2 touchdowns. And Kyron Jones even played 8, he had 5 completions on 7 attempts for 100 yards, 41 rushing attempts for 259 yards, which most of those came in the second half, mind you, they did, for 7 touchdowns. Richard Reese, he's a true freshman. He had 9 rushing attempts for 62 yards with 2 touchdowns, which long was 23 yards. Quaylon Jones had 6 rushing attempts for 59 yards with 1 touchdown, which the long was 27 yards. Monterey Baldwin had 2 rushing attempts for 46 yards with 1 touchdown, which the long was 50 yards on that touchdown run. Tatum McWilliams had 12 rushing attempts for 45 yards, which most of that was not great in the first half. Not a good job executing. Blake Shapen had 4 rushing attempts for 11 yards with 1 touchdown, which the long was 11. So Craig Squirrel Williams, I didn't expect him to play, but he played. He had 3 rushing attempts for 13 yards with 1 touchdown, which long was 5 yards. Monterey Baldwin also had 4 receptions for 84 yards with 1 touchdown, which the long was 47 yards. Hal Presley had 3 receptions for 56 yards with 1 touchdown, which the long was 38 yards. Jalen Ellis played later in the game. He had 1 reception for 50 yards on the 3rd and long. So, Ben Sims had 5 receptions for 37 yards, which long was 14 yards. Drake Damity had only 1 reception, but that's for 29 yards. And of course, there's other guys on the list. But Tatum McWilliams, had 4 receptions also and 20 yards, which long was yards, 29 first downs on offense, which is a good thing. And 7 for 30 for 11 on third down, as well as 1 for 2 on fourth down, which the fourth down misconversion, not converted, that led to a short field for Albany, and they scored a touchdown. They only allowed 2 sacks, which is not bad. Bryson Jackson had a fumble recovery on defense, which later on turned into 7 points for the offense in the first half. Overall, defensively, they allowed 237 yards, which 150 of those are passing, 87 rushing. 5 for 17 on third down. Gavin Holmes had 3 punt returns for 96 yards, including a 72-yard punt return touchdown. Jordan Neighbors even got to play, and he had, as a punt returner, 3 punt returns for 34 yards, which along was 25 yards, made 9 extra points out of 10, which one of them was no good because he got blocked. Isaac Power had only 1 punt during the game for 57 yards, which landed inside the 20-yard line. In fact, it was like inside the 10 even. So all kickoffs were a touchback except 1 or 2. One of them for sure was ran out. The other one, they called a fair catch, but the ball hit the ground first, and then they touched it, and they were inside their own 5 to begin the possession. So no injuries came out of the game, as I believe they didn't, which is a good thing. And they get to play a lot of guys last night too, so that's helpful for experience, especially at the skill positions at running back. But I will say, they need to improve going to BYU, and I'm sure they're going to look at film and say, look, we got to do a better job in these areas. Like, they just need to find a way to be better and containing the pass. Okay. First downs. Albany only had 10 first downs in the game. That's a positive. It's really pretty good, though. Some of those, but at least they committed more penalties than Baylor did. 10 penalties for Albany for 72 yards. So I like what they showed last night in some aspects, but other aspects they just need improvement. But it's game number 1 of the year, so I expect improvement to happen. Anyways, if you like this content, hit the like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys later. It's going to 400 subscribers or more by the end of this year.